The year is 1942. The Pacific Ocean is a vast, unforgiving theater of war. Its pristine blue waters stained with the oil of sunken ships and the blood of a generation, following the catastrophic surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. The United States finds itself violently thrust into a conflict of unprecedented scale. The Imperial Japanese Navy is sweeping across the Pacific like an unstoppable tidal wave, capturing islands, establishing bases, and projecting power through absolute air superiority. In modern warfare, control of the skies dictates control of the land and sea. But airplanes need runways, bombers need fuel depots, fighters need maintenance hangars. The United States military is facing a logistical nightmare of epic proportions. They need bases, and they need them yesterday, on remote, hostile jungle islands thousands of miles from the American mainland. Initially, the military relies on civilian contractors to build these vital installations. These are hard-working men, skilled in their trades, but they are civilians. According to the strict rules of international law, if a civilian takes up arms against an enemy, they can be executed as a guerrilla. This tragic reality is laid bare on Wake Island in December of 1941. When the Japanese forces overrun the island, the civilian construction workers there are caught in a desperate, impossible situation. Many are killed. Hundreds more are taken as prisoners of war, subjected to years of brutal captivity. The Wake Island tragedy sends a shockwave through the highest echelons of the United States Navy. The old way of doing things is completely obsolete. You cannot send unarmed civilians into a meat grinder and expect them to build a war machine. The Navy realizes, with sudden and terrifying clarity, that they need a new breed of warrior. They need men who can carve a functioning airstrip out of an impenetrable malarial jungle, build a deep-water pier on a jagged coral reef, and, most importantly, drop their tools at a moment's notice to pick up a rifle and defend what they have built. The answer comes from a visionary officer named Admiral Ben Morrell, the chief of the Navy's Bureau of Yards and Docks. He recognizes the critical gap in the American war effort and requests authority to organize naval construction units composed of military personnel. He wants builders who are trained to fight. In March of 1942, his vision becomes reality. The Naval Construction Battalions are officially born. From the phonetic pronunciation of their acronym, CB, a legend is forged, the Seabees. But who are these men? They are not the fresh-faced 18-year-old recruits pouring out of high schools and into boot camps. The Seabees are a radically different demographic. The Navy needs master tradesmen, and you do not become a master overnight. They need seasoned carpenters, electricians, heavy machinery operators, welders, dynamiters, and civil engineers. To get them, the Navy relaxes its age restrictions. The average age of a CB during the Second World War is 37 years old. Many of them are in their 40s and 50s. They are men who survived the Great Depression, men who built the Hoover Dam, the towering skyscrapers of New York, and the sprawling highways of a modernizing America. They are tough, grizzled, independent, and immensely proud of their craft. They leave behind their families, their unions, and their comfortable civilian paychecks to serve a nation in peril. Their training is intense and unorthodox. They are shipped to Camp Allen and later Camp Peary, where they are handed an M-1 Garand rifle alongside their tool belts. They are taught infantry tactics, marksmanship, and hand-to-hand combat by hardened Marine Corps instructors. The transition from civilian tradesman to combat-ready engineer is grueling, but these older men possess a gritty resilience that surprises their younger instructors. They adopt the motto, Construmus, Batuimus, we build, we fight. It is not just a slogan, it is a sacred vow. They adopt an emblem that perfectly captures their spirit, a flying bee wearing a sailor's white cap, holding a roaring Tommy gun in its front hands, a wrench in its middle hands, and a carpenter's hammer in its lower hands. The real test comes almost immediately as they are deployed into the suffocating, hostile environments of the South Pacific Theater. The enemy is not just the Imperial Japanese forces. The environment itself is trying to kill them. They face impenetrable jungles, bottomless mud, torrential monsoon rains, and the ever-present scourge of malaria and dengue fever. Yet their task remains the same: pave the way for the Allied counteroffensive. They must leapfrog across the Pacific, island by island, constructing the very infrastructure that will allow American bombers to reach the Japanese home islands. The Seabees operate under a terrifying paradox. To build an airfield, you need to clear land. Clearing land requires massive, deafening machinery, bulldozers, earth movers, chainsaws, and explosives. This noise is a homing beacon for enemy snipers, mortar teams, and bomber squadrons. The Seabees are tasked with performing precision engineering while quite literally standing in the crosshairs of the enemy. There is no stealth in construction. They are the loudest targets on the battlefield. As the American war machine begins its slow, agonizing crawl across the Pacific, the Seabees are always at the vanguard. They are the first to arrive, often landing alongside the initial waves of Marine assault troops. They drag their massive Caterpillar D8 bulldozers through the surf, the heavy steel tracks churning the bloody sand as artillery shells rain down around them. Their job is not just to fight, but to transform a chaotic, hellish beachhead into a functional logistical hub in a matter of hours. They are about to face their greatest crucible on a sweltering, disease-ridden rock in the Solomon Islands, an island called Guadalcanal. Here, the concept of building under fire will cease to be a theory and become a bloody, desperate reality. The fate of the entire Pacific War will hinge on a single patch of dirt, a half-finished runway carved into the jungle, and the unyielding stubbornness of middle-aged American builders who refuse to let it fall. The Seabee miracle is about to begin. The battle for Guadalcanal in August of 1942 is the turning point of the Pacific War, and at the absolute dead center of this meat grinder is Henderson Field. When American Marines storm the island, they capture a partially completed Japanese airstrip, but holding it is only half the battle. It must be made operational immediately. American fighter planes and dive bombers need a place to land, refuel, and launch counterattacks against the relentless Japanese naval bombardment. Enter the Seabees of the 6th Naval Construction Battalion. They arrive in a chaotic hellscape. The Japanese, realizing the strategic disaster of losing the airfield, unleash a relentless, terrifying bombardment from the sea and the air. Night after night, Japanese battleships shell the airstrip, tearing massive craters into the dirt runway, obliterating equipment, and killing men. By day, Japanese Zero fighters and Betty bombers rain high explosives from the sky. The runway is continuously turned into a smoking, crater-pocked lunar landscape. Yet, the moment the bombardment pauses, the Seabees emerge from their muddy foxholes. The engines of their bulldozers roar to life, cutting through the smoke and the screams of the wounded. They race against time and death to fill the bomb craters, grading the earth, compacting it, and smoothing it out before the next wave of American planes needs to land. They perform this miracle over and over again, day after day, week after week. When dirt and mud prove too unstable for the heavy bombers, the Seabees utilize a revolutionary piece of logistics, Marston Matting. These are heavy, perforated steel planks that interlock to form a stable, load-bearing surface over the soft jungle earth. Millions of square feet of this steel matting are laid down by hand, under the searing tropical sun, while under constant sniper fire. The Seabees work with a frantic, coordinated rhythm, slamming the heavy steel planks together, locking them in place, and moving forward, literally paving the road to victory, inch by bloody inch. It is at Guadalcanal that the Seabees forged their legendary reputation. When an American bomber is coming in for an emergency landing, with its landing gear shot away, the Seabees don't wait for a crash crew. They drive their bulldozers directly onto the active runway, matching the speed of the crashing plane, to catch the wing and prevent the aircraft from cartwheeling into a fiery explosion. When sniper fire pins down Marine infantry platoons, Seabees weld thick steel plates to the sides of their bulldozers, creating makeshift tanks. They drive these armored bulldozers directly into enemy pillboxes, burying the machine gun nests under tons of earth so the Marines can advance. They are not just builders. They are combat engineers operating at the very edge of human endurance and ingenuity. As the war progresses, the island-hopping campaign accelerates, and the Seabees' tasks become even more Herculean. On the island of Tarawa, they build a bomber strip over a coral reef in a matter of days. Despite taking horrific casualties from deeply entrenched enemy defenders, they learn to adapt to the unique geology of the Pacific. They discover that crushed coral, when watered with seawater and compacted by heavy rollers, cures into a surface almost as hard as concrete. This discovery changes the face of the war. Whole islands are terraformed. Jungles are flattened, mountains are leveled and massive. Multi-lane highways are carved through places where humans had barely set foot a year prior. The climax of their Pacific Odyssey arrives with the assaults on Tinian and Iwo Jima. Tinian is destined to become the largest airfield in the world. The Seabees are tasked with building the massive runways required for the new Boeing B-29 Superfortresses, the colossal bombers that will carry the war directly to the Japanese mainland. The scale of the construction is staggering. The Seabees move millions of cubic yards of earth, operating massive rock crushers and asphalt plants 24 hours a day, under the constant threat of sniper fire and night infiltration by desperate enemy holdouts. They transform the island of Tinian into a sprawling, hyper-efficient metropolis of aviation, entirely dedicated to launching the firebombing raids that will break the back of the enemy's industrial capacity. It is from these very runways, built by the sweat and blood of the Seabees, that the Enola Gay will eventually take off to deliver the first atomic bomb altering the course of human history forever. On the black sands of Iwo Jima, the Seabees face their most gruesome test. The island is a fortress of volcanic ash and sulfur, defended by an enemy willing to fight to the last man. The Seabees land under heavy artillery fire, their heavy equipment sinking into the loose, treacherous sand. But they do not falter. They build roads up the side of Mount Suribachi, while under direct mortar fire. They clear the captured Japanese airstrips of unexploded ordnance and debris, working feverishly so that crippled American bombers, returning from raids over Tokyo, have a safe place to land. It is estimated that the emergency runways built by the Seabees on Iwo Jima save the lives of over 24,000 American airmen who would have otherwise perished in the unforgiving expanse of the Pacific Ocean. The war finally ends in September of 19. The contribution of the Naval Construction Battalions is undeniable. They built over 400 advanced bases across the Pacific Theater. They paved miles of runways, constructed massive fuel depots, erected state-of-the-art hospitals, and dredged deep-water ports, all while under the constant, terrifying specter of enemy fire. They suffered immense casualties, paying in blood for every yard of earth they moved. They proved that the American tradesman, armed with a wrench, a rifle, and an unbreakable spirit, was an unstoppable force of nature. The Seabees did not just build the infrastructure of victory. They laid the very foundations upon which the free world would stand. Their legacy is carved into the coral of forgotten islands and woven into the fabric of the United States Navy. They were the miracle workers of the Pacific, the older men who left their homes to do the impossible. They lived, fought, and died by a simple, profound truth. The difficult is done at once. The impossible takes a bit longer. We build, we fight,